kick out at one. Kicked out at one.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kick Out at One, a wrestling adjacent podcast. My name is Vivian J, the trained unprofessional, along with my co-host, forever lost Mikey Wild. And today we have a very special guest with us, the one and only Russian diamond, Xenia. She is a wonderful powerhouse of social media, a wrestling vlogger and presenter, a entrepreneur of many sorts. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. How are you doing today?
Doing great myself. I don't want to speak for Mikey. I don't know. Are you miserable?
I'm lovely.
You're doing
Never
great.
have I ever been miserable. I'm lovely.
We're just so glad to have you here because you have a very unique story for being able to enter the wrestling sphere from a background that we can't speak to from our own personal background, not only geographically but also from I'm losing my mind. I've completely lost where the sentence was going.
No, it's a lot.
Xenia, how on earth did you get into pro wrestling?
Yes, that's where I was trying to go. I apologize.
I mean, as a fan, I got into it like pretty early for European. I started watching when I was about 11 years old, and I'm 26 now, about to turn 27 next month.
Happy early birthday!
Thank you. So it's been a good while, but as a creator, that was a bit of a later start because I actually do have a formal education in journalism and PR, and I did try for a while to be a normal grown-up and to have a normal job. I worked for a news channel, I worked for some PR departments here and there, but at some point I just stopped and I was like, wait, I love wrestling so much, and I am capable of interviewing people and creating content and producing videos. Why not just put the two together and see what happens? I feel like I'm still at the see what happens stage because I do have a lot of visions, plans. I do feel like there's still a huge path ahead, but I think it's working out pretty well, if I do say so myself.
I'd say so.
Yeah. You've led a very successful career already, and you just continued a meteoric rise. What would you say was, you say it was, I have this passion, I want to make the jump. You have the beginning stages where you were reviewing like a SmackDown set, like a toy collection set.
Oh my god, you saw that! Oh my god, that makes me want to private my old videos. That's like, okay, fun fact. So the SmackDown Elite Scale Wrestling Arena unboxing, right? It was not the first video on the channel, but I feel like it was the second video that I ever filmed for YouTube, and it's terrible. It's the worst.
but you're able to see how far you've come from that.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That's a big deal.
That's a good thing, yes.
Yeah, when you climb a mountain, you got to start somewhere, and then when you're where you're at, you're able to look down and see, oh man, you see the progress,
It's one of the things with journaling. Whenever you're like, oh, I feel like I'm getting nothing done, like you can go back to, oh wow, you know what? I've made significant progress.
Oh yeah. Funny that you mentioned that because, like now I do mostly interviews, right? So like if you look at my channel, it's mostly interviews. But back in the day when I just started, it was mostly wrestling figure videos. Like I haven't thought about them in a while, but now that you bring it up, it's all like rushing back.
Yeah. And so and it's a wonderful start because that's something that you've got the passion for, and so you went from the professional world of the education and the corporate grind and all this other stuff, and then you make the jump to the social media working and putting yourself out there for a passion job. What would you say was the catalyst for that? What made you take the chance on yourself? Because it's obviously paid off And you're
That's
really putting in the work for it. And you're really, really doing it very awesomely. It's really to your own credit. What would you say was that? Jumping off?
You're really making me like introspect here. I'm like, wow. What is going on? Honestly, I don't think I have a clear answer. I think it was more of like a coming of age thing, because I started the channel, 4 years ago? So I was 22. It's almost like you're coming out of this like youthful, careless stage in your life when you're like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to be when I grow up. And you stop and think, and you're like, I am growing up. And do I want to be exactly this as I'm growing up? Or do I want to change something? Or do I want to actually pursue something that I love and something that I'm actually passionate about? I'm not saying I didn't love my journalist PR jobs. Like it was a great experience, and I worked with art. I worked at art fairs. I worked at fintech conferences. I worked, as I said, for a news channel. It was great fun, but ultimately I just realized at one point that I love wrestling so much. I always say that wrestling is the love of my life. I've never loved anyone or anything as much as I love wrestling, and it would just be a shame to not give it a shot.
Yeah, and it's not like you haven't used those professional skills on the channel yourself. You mentioned in a video your first time anchoring was at Ringside Fest.
Yeah.
And can you speak to what that was like, being able to bring skills from your professional life into a professional presentation of your social media and your YouTube career?
That was a great experience because, as you guys know, because you scrolled back on my channel, I am actually very passionate about wrestling figures.
Yeah.
I still am. I keep asking people, like, do you guys want to see more wrestling figure videos? And it feels like people don't really, but I still do.
Yes.
It was great. It was a change for sure, because all of a sudden you're in such a different environment. Like, it's a different language, even though I do speak it, obviously. It's a different, it's a different viewer that you're addressing. But also, because I had experience, I almost like snap into it when the camera is on. So it wasn't like a brave new world. It wasn't that nerve-wracking in that sense. Like, again, not to brag, but I know what I'm doing, so I'm gonna do it. And like, literally, when we were recording this one segment for their vlog, literally Undisputed Era were like right behind me. I was like,
no
that's
pressure.
Doing it well.
If you mess up something, Bobby Fish is just gonna like not
oh
let
my
it
God,
go.
not Bobby Fish. What's so funny though? Like, again, you just keep like hitting like such specific points about my online presence, because I did mention on Twitter quite recently that when I was younger, like before I started doing this, Bobby Fish was one of my like wrestling crushes. So yeah, definitely no pressure.
Speaking of wrestling figures, I did want to ask you real quick, as you've got the expertise and you've got the acumen to be able to accurately judge worth and value. I do have something. I am not a collector by any means of the word, but I do have a particular item. If you wouldn't mind looking at it,
it's the best.
Mikey is really he just saw it today. Excited. If you wouldn't mind looking at it, and just to give your thoughts on it, if you wouldn't mind.
I would like nothing more than to look at it.
It is from just the right before the turn of the 20th century to or the turn of the 21st century, I guess. It is this Goldberg Head Slammers mug.
Stupidest thing.
Oh my God.
It is still in the package. It's never been opened.
Oh, it's hideous.
You can even tell it's a mug because it says right on the package, it's a mug.
It's a mug. And I like how it's not even a picture of the mug. It's just a picture of his face onto the mug.
It doesn't even encapsulate the whole mug because you can see the mug. God. You can see dreadful. This thin handle. On the other side, it's got a picture of Hogan. And on the back, you got Kevin Nash
Oh.
not wanting to be there. Sting very much not wanting to be there.
Can't imagine why they went out of business, guys.
It's got this thin handle so you can take it to class with you. And you got the man himself on top asking where his royalty checks are.
Oh my god.
And you can collect them all because apparently there's more of them.
If you had all of them, that would be a fortune. You would be such a fortune.
It's got the original tag.
I couldn't give you an accurate estimate, but I'm for sure, I'm going to tell you that this could do very well at a toy show. Like, there would be collectors who would kill for this. Like,
I appreciate that.
Like, people who collect, it's either people who collect like quirky stuff, like bootleg stuff, like weird merch, stuff like that, or people who like, collect merch / figures / other trinkets of a particular wrestler. Like, can you imagine a massive freaking Goldberg collector just walking by your table at a toy show, catching the mug catching their eye, and they're just like, where have you been all my life?
I've been selling so much wrestling stuff on Mercari, and like there's just not like a huge wrestling market, but like I'm not going to a bunch of different wrestling shows to sell my stuff. But it's a shame because honestly, I could probably sell everything in a matter of 3 weeks opposed to Mercari, because there are people who like there's something for everybody. I know because I've walked by them and go, I need that. No, you don't. Yeah, I do. For what?
It's like people, again, maybe don't realize how into figures I still am because I haven't made a video in a bit. But
I had no idea.
I feel like I just get I get more niche about it because I used to buy like everything. I used to be like, oh, cool, this is a figure for wrestler that I like. That's coming out. Let me buy that. But now I barely ever buy new figures. Like I buy AEW figures sometimes just because I'm like still excited. So, like about some of the wrestlers.
Yeah.
But I am very, very into like early 2000s Jack specific. Mm-hmm. And I go to toy shows and you can just see me like digging through them. And like it's so hard to find an MOC Jax, right? Because when they were coming out first, there wasn't such a culture of collecting wrestling figures. They were toys for kids. So whenever you go to a toy show, there's tubs and tubs of loose Jack specific and in terrible condition.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to find it's actually on card and especially in like somewhat good condition. One of my proudest possessions is the Jack specific figure of as I call him Ziggler before Ziggler, Nikki from Spirit Squad.
Yes.
It's mint. It's mint. It's perfect. And literally, it's like you can like pry it out of my dead cold hands. I'm never like selling it or anything.
I have 2 questions. One, how far back do you go generationally with the figures? And 2, what is your favorite era of figures? Is it that 2000 Jax, or is that just what you're into now? It is, okay.
It's at least currently.
The bone crunching action.
Dude, I was literally gonna say, I can't say that I have a lot of like super like retro figures, but I just recently got my hands on my first Bone Cruncher.
Oh, dude, I love them so much. I love them.
It's actually in pretty good condition too, and like it almost pains me how like I'm never gonna hear it crunch, but in my heart.
And how far back do you go with the figures? Like, do you do Hasbro's, LJNs?
No, I don't. Okay. I feel like the Bone Cruncher might be the oldest one they have.
Okay. Well, that's fun.
I still say I'm not a super serious collector. Like, I'm not a person who, like, sees it as an investment. Like, it's not... I don't go that deep into it. It's just that, like, there's something that my heart desires. And usually it's just... it used to be just, like I said, just figures that I liked. But now it's more like niche stuff. Again, the Jax. Sure. I love like indie figure companies. I love Figure Toy Company. I love custom figures. Like I don't own that many figures, but I watch some of the artists. I follow them on social medias. Mad Reaper. I also pre-ordered the Zombie Sailor Denhausen too, and it's gonna be my first Zombie Sailor figure, which is
That's
like
awesome.
I'm such a huge fan of Zombie Sailor. Like I've wanted a Zombie Sailor figure for a while, but the pre-sale is crazy. Like it's like an AW show and it's a pre-sale, so it's gonna be my first Zombie Sailor figure. I love the peculiar stuff. Probably one of my first like non-super mainstream figures that I ever bought was when I went to Vegas for the first time in just 2017 maybe or 16. I went to the Fight Shop, which is an amazing place. If you're into anything's combat, I highly recommend. But it was even cooler back then because they were at their old location at Miracle Mile, and it was insane. Like you walk in and it's just like everything there, and they had this huge figure shelf, and I literally I was like waist deep in the figure shelf. And that's where I found my first ROH figure, and it was an ROH Kevin Steen. And I was like, wow. I was like, whoa, those exist. So since I've also procured ROH Redragon and, a lot of other things, I do have a signed figure toy company, Kenny Omega. I have a signed figure toy company, Taya Valkyrie. That just kickstarted my slippery slope into non-mainstream wrestling figures.
Oh yeah.
For the longest time, I was a wrestling figure collector of sorts. I had around 400 or 500 of them.
Oh,
The problem being is I wasn't collecting them in the sense of I'm putting them anywhere in their boxes and looking at them. All of them were open, and I was 100% playing with every single one of them.
Oh my god! That pains me to hear. That's terrible.
Including up to yesterday when I got a new one, opened it. And I was just moving stuff and some wrestlers there. And next to 10 minutes have gone by and my roommate was like, hey, are you going to bring that? And I was like, sorry, I was going to do a pedigree real quick. All right. I am a child.
I have about 270 or 280, I think, at this point, which is also, it's not a lot. But when I lived in Russia, it was the biggest collection in Eastern Europe. So it was kind of difficult to find them there and to order.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But also, I do unpack some of them because you have to let them breathe. I usually unpack the boring stuff, the Mattel basics, or when Jezreelers released the AEW Best Friends figures, and everyone knows that I'm a mark for Best Friends. I tweeted that whenever those figures release, I'm gonna get 2 of each. And I did. So I have 2 MOC and 2 loose.
So you mentioned something there that I want to touch on real quick, because you said when I lived in Russia, because you're currently not. So where are you living these days?
I am living in Spain currently. That's where my family has been living long before I also moved here.
Oh, okay.
Oh, nice.
Now, in Spain, in your area, is there independent wrestling, a major wrestling promotion?
The short answer would be no. Because my area is not a huge metropolitan city. We're in Palma, and that's not a big city at all. But there is a somewhat large promotion in Madrid, the Triple W. Okay. And that's where the winner of the NXT UK International Cup comes from. Yeah, A-Kid. And they also do some indie shows here and there. There's going to be a show in Barcelona in October, if I'm not mistaken, but it's very sparse. It's not a situated wrestling scene.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of NXT, with the recent announcement, NXT UK, the canceled tapings and the possibility of it being changed to NXT Europe as opposed to just NXT UK. With you being local there now, what are your thoughts on the idea of it not being so centralized to NXT UK and instead being more spread out to NXT Europe and being more spread to the entire area?
Yeah, a lot of people are negative about it because they feel like Triple H is trying to drain the local scenes and ruin European wrestling. But from within, from inside of it, there's literally only a somewhat structured, consistent scene in the UK and in Germany. Like, I wouldn't really say that there's like a scene anywhere else. Like, I wouldn't say there's a Spanish wrestling scene. Like, there's one promotion that's like pulling its weight, and then there's like some sporadic indie shows here and there. And in this regard, I almost feel like it might even create a space for wrestling to exist where it doesn't now, because I'm part Romanian, right? And I go there sometimes, for obvious reasons. But one of the times that I went, I actually made like a mini documentary about wrestling in Romania, because it's insane how young of an industry it is. Like, I couldn't even say industry, how young of a scene it is, because there's one promotion, there's one wrestling school in the entire country, and there's a cumulative number of like maybe 30 wrestlers in the entirety of the country. And the guy who started it is actually British. And he used to train with Killian Dane and Nikki Cross, and he moved to Romania, and he literally drove a wrestling ring to Romania.
Holy
and he set up the school, and he's literally like the founding father of wrestling in the entire country. So it was really fun to get to talk to him and interview him for the channel. And I also talked to an aspiring wrestler as well. And not to, reveal too much of the backstage stuff in terms of my intention versus what actually the video turned out to be. But so my idea, according to the script, was to finish the video with the little interview segment with the wrestler, where I would ask him of his like wildest wrestling dreams, and we would end on this like super inspiring note that like, oh, this is growing, and like this is what this person aspires to be, and like it's so cool and wonderful. What ended up happening wasn't that. We ended up on a very sad note. Like, I had to even like put sad music over it, make it black and white. It was depressing as all hell. Because I asked him what his dreams were, and I accentuated, like I tried to like lead him into it, and I was like whatever it is, like maybe you want to main event WrestleMania, maybe you want to, I don't know, wrestle Randy Orton, whatever, something. And he just kept saying, he was sitting there and going like, no, I know that I'm never going to succeed. I know that I'm never going to get signed with a large company. I know that this is all like just for my like personal, development, but it's not going to lead to anything. So having seen that and having talked to people who are like that, like, hell yeah, by all means, bring a wrestling platform to Europe. Like, that's a great thing to do.
My first thought was how many, like, I saw you would interview Starbuck from Finland, and there's so many talented people in Finland, boys and girls, that
I also interviewed Bjorn Sam. He's from Sweden, right?
Yeah, Sweden.
Yeah. Bjorn Sam and Ruslan. Yeah.
Those Nordic countries that there's so much talent on, but they're removed from the UK and they don't have the access to really be platformed. And so I think this could be potentially a huge thing for the surrounding areas outside of the UK. I'm excited for them.
Literally, I've interviewed wrestlers from, I think, 11 or 12 countries. I've interviewed wrestlers from, as you said, Finland, Sweden, Hungary, all across Europe. And a lot of the times, they just don't have the access to proper platforms, because there was this one wrestler from Hungary who, because he like, you know how it is with America, he like accidentally breached a work visa, and he was banned from the country for 10 years.
Oh my God.
And when that happened, he was already like in his 30s. Like, that's a death sentence if you were going to wrestle in America. Like, you're done. And it's sad that there's not much, there's not much else to do. There's not many other places to go. So I feel like it's a great incentive to create this like opportunity, because a lot of people just know in their heart of hearts that they just don't have access to them. And it would be great if they did.
Yeah. Agreed. Speaking of all these interviews that you've done, you interviewed people from over a dozen different countries, and way more than that, stars of all levels of stardom. I've seen you interview WrestleMania main eventers all the way down to indie names that are on the rise. It's been an absolute joy to see your catalog of interviews. It's inspiring, especially for a show like ours that's just starting up. I wanted to ask you, how do you prepare for these interviews, both, on a mental scale, just internally, and if you could share any tips and tricks, research or anything like that. What is your strategy to prepare for interviews on a short scale, short time frame, or if you have a longer time frame?
Yeah, so the entire idea of the kind of interviews that I do is I call them turnkey interviews.
Mhm.
And what I try to do is I try to ask unconventional questions. I try to ask questions that haven't been asked of this wrestler, and questions that this wrestler might actually have fun discussing or be willing to share their perspective on them because of their experiences in the industry or just their life experiences on the whole. So like the basic thing, of course, would be to read/watch their previous interviews and like see what's the recurring questions that we are trying to avoid. But also another thing is whenever I interview wrestlers, the way I do it is I usually, when I inquire, I already know what's the main topic that I want to talk to the wrestler about. And that's like part of the reason why this interviews like happen on a seemingly weird, in a seemingly weird time frame, because I've inquired for interviews and I've had wrestlers ask me like, "Why didn't you ask me earlier?" But I just feel the need to, as a creator, right, to understand what this wrestler stands for me to be able to bring it out and for the viewer to be able to also feel that, because I need to have a very, very clear idea of what this wrestler is about to be able to ask the right questions. And my goal is when you click on the interview, even if you see this wrestler for the first time in your entire life, I want you to still be compelled to watch it, and I want you to still be entertained, and I want you to learn something. And sometimes that thing that I single out, sometimes I'm wrong about it. Sometimes I think we're going to go off talking about, say, a heel presentation in cinematic promos, but then it turns out this person just so happens to like rescue animals and love dogs and devote all of their free time to that, so we'll just dive into that. And it's just, my idea and my concept is wrestlers are humans, obviously, newsflash, and they are way bigger than their persona, and they are way bigger than a worker, and they all have their peculiarities, and those peculiarities shape them as a worker as well. And that's why I feel the need to unpack them and to tackle them. I also always tell wrestlers before we start rolling that as a journalist, my job is to ask the hard questions. But if you don't want to answer, that's perfectly fine. And they're free to always tell me that they don't want to say something that is no comment, and I will cut it, no questions asked. I've had that happen. And I do mention it when I give you interviews, because people have tried to hold it against me. Because I have an interview with Sean Dean, who is a veteran who was in the army, and we talked about the gendered injustices in the army, and we talked about the issue of sexual assault in the army, and that video got a lot of clicks, partially because of those difficult topics. And some of the comments were like, "Oh my God, he looks so uncomfortable. I bet he hated it. I bet he would never even talk to you again." Literally, I left the set after the interview, and on Twitter, it's public. You can go look it up. He mentioned me and he went "Oh, thank you for the interview. This was a great experience." And I could tell that he, liked talking about it in a way that it's more insightful, it's more important, I guess I could say, because he's also very much an advocate for a lot of initiatives that have to do with Army veterans. He brought in several foundations, several charities that AEW has worked with in terms of helping veterans, helping people who suffer from PTSD, helping people with disabilities, and stuff like that. So he also genuinely believes in the cause. So it's my pleasure to give him a platform.
Absolutely. Abso-friggin-lutely. That's one of the things that I think some people tend to forget, is that it's not just a matter of turn on a microphone and stick them with something and hope that whatever. It's more than that. And that I'm very glad that you mentioned that example specifically, because that is something that I feel you might get unfair and fairly on the surface level. Just people will look at something and imagine some idea of what happened. They'll see something and they'll figure what is going on. Do you figure that happens a lot where if it's an uncomfortable topic or an uncomfortable situation, that because you said you ask difficult questions, you're obviously only going to include ones that are consensual and ones that are agreed upon, but is it something that you find almost detrimental, or have you ever felt the desire to shrink away from that? Or is that only empowered you to ask difficult questions? These people that seem to create the narrative in their heads or spread it that it's a problem, or that you shouldn't ask these questions, or that, oh, so such and such has this expression, or they don't seem to want to answer it, therefore it's a problem, when clearly it isn't. And you know better, but they seem to not.
Yeah. I've never had an impulse to pull away from that, really. I wouldn't say so. And when I say ask hard questions, they're hard for the wrestler, they're hard for the viewer to hear, but they're also hard for me, because a lot of the times, especially, I'm very openly a feminist. I advocate for exposure for women in the industry. And there's some topics like that I'm very familiar with, because it's something that I've also experienced. But when I go into the interview and I'm trying to talk to a wrestler about a hardship that they've experienced that I have no experience with whatsoever, that's when I'm nervous. That's when I'm trying to be very, very respectful, very, very careful. Say, when I was interviewing, some wrestlers of different cultural backgrounds, I don't know what they've experienced, and I need to be respectful of it, and I need to let them speak on their terms. Or when I've interviewed, say, Dark Sheik, who's transgender, and I have no experience with that, but I wanted to talk to her about her experience in the industry as a transgender woman, and how she overcame some difficulties that came with it, because I feel like it's important to talk about it. But as a cis woman who has no experience and who doesn't know what it's like, I had to be really careful with the way that I formulated the questions and with the way that I approached it. I feel like, the answer is pretty much being respectful, being careful, being very open, communicative with the talent, and, seeing what works and what doesn't. And also, another thing is social media. It's always going to be very touchy. Topics like that are always going to be very acute, and you cannot blame people for that, because they are touchy and they are acute, and people live their lives like that, and people want to be represented in a way that's respectful and that's accurate. And I cannot say I'm perfect. I've had my moments. I've definitely been canceled on Twitter a couple of times, and it's definitely made me learn some things the hard way. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because I wouldn't want my followers to just let it slide. I wouldn't want my followers to protect me regardless of what I say. If there's something off, I want to be educated, and I want to be open, and I want to listen, because as an interviewer, that's all I strive to do. I have to be able to approach a huge array of different topics with respect and to be informed. It's another thing when people start being aggressive about it, which again sometimes is justified because they're hurt, because aggression comes from hurt, and I hurt those people, so it's only logical that they're aggressive. But a lot of the times it's hard to discern whether a person is trying to help or whether they're just jumping on the bandwagon because they didn't like you from the start, and they're just finally allowed to be an asshole to you. That also happens. They're like, oh, it's finally a socially acceptable opportunity to call her the B word. But yeah, it's something that's definitely a little harder to navigate than if I were just asking them oh, what's your favorite match? What's your dream opponent? It's definitely comes with its complexities, but it's definitely still not something that I would want to step away from.
And for me, I mean, I've been in wrestling for 15 years, going on 16. So I've found I get most invested in wrestlers when I hear them talk about topics that have nothing to do with wrestling, and I can share, and I can share that commonality. Like when I didn't know Ricky Shane Page outside of my buddy who does death matches with him. When I found how into pop punk he is, I'm like, yeah. and so then just talk to Ricky Shane Page about pop punk music, and now I root for him heavily on everything he does. And I think a lot of fans can relate to that, like, because there's so much of these same styles of wrestling all the time. Characters don't get presented as much as they used to, and they don't have time to develop characters as much as they used to. So I think bringing out those characteristics of the human behind the character is a huge deal, and not something that a lot of wrestling interviewers do. It's, again, who was your favorite opponent? When did you do this? So I really enjoy that you take on that, and get to know the person behind the character. And you said people talking about Sean Dean, like he looked uncomfortable. Like, I think they appreciate it too. I've known Sean's a Chicago guy, so I've known him before he went to train with AR Fox. He still owes me a rematch for that title. But he's a sweetheart of a guy who loves talking about these types of things. The reason he looked awkward was he doesn't talk about them often. So it was something that you don't get to see his look when he talks about this. So he's introspective, he's thinking, and he's looking. Well, that's not how you usually see him. So it just comes off different. And I think, to your applaud, that's wonderful.
Actually, as an interviewer, the best thing a talent can tell me is no one has ever asked me this question before, or thank you for asking me. I wanted to talk about it. Like when I hear those phrases, like I know I did my job well.
Yeah,
because I'm sorry, Viv, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
No, I said go ahead.
Oh, jeez. Definitely gonna edit this part out.
It's a good thing it's gonna be edited.
Yeah, this is never gonna be live.
That was one of your first questions. One of your first questions was, "Is this gonna be live?" I was like, "Dude, no." And you and I were both like, "Oh, thank God! Like, we cannot do live. Not gonna happen."
I'm doing live stuff when I'm the guest, but I don't think I could do live
when it's someone else's problem. Sure,
I'm just gonna show up.
when the burden of the flow is.
I'm way too much of a goofball and a doofus to do things completely live, unless it's like in front of a crowd. But otherwise.
Yeah.
So you step on each other, for instance. Sorry, Viv, again. You step on each other so much during I'm done. All right, Viv, you.
The worst part is that you're sitting here thinking, like, is what you're saying even worth, like, being like, oh, no, I know what I was going to say is definitely not worth it. Jeez.
It takes, like, mental strength to be like, yes, what I have to say is more important.
Right.
Exactly. Let's all take a drink break. We've been talking for a while.
So I have a non-interview question, or it could be, doesn't matter to me. So one thing talking about what we were just talking about is I want to have people back on to where we talk about random stuff. Like, for instance, Bunny, I'm going to have her on to just talk horror movies. That's it. Yeah. So that's why it's like wrestling adjacent. Like, we're going to have wrestlers on. That's like let's not talk wrestling. Let's just talk. So is there things like this? Because figures, I will be more than happy. I love wrestling figures. Yeah. Is there other things that you would come back on and want to talk about? Or even
food.
If food?
I'm a huge foodie. I have a cooking series on my channel.
Okay.
I do like food reviews on Instagram too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're definitely going to mention this so that we can plug it, and then we'll have you back on to talk it. Yes, please.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I saw the European Tries American Food series on your
Oh my God, part 2 is coming out now, soon, in like 2 weeks, and I'm so excited. And this part is going to have a wrestler guest in every location. It's going to be 3 locations and 3 wrestlers.
That'll be a blast.
Nice. That's the thing. Like, is working like. I want to say working the gimmick because it's your literal nationality, but like it's part
it's
of
her.
Yeah,
it is a gimmick. Though.
Yeah,
it's like it's not a gimmick when it comes to my like serious content. Like it's not something that I push when I do interviews or when I ring announce or when I do commentary. But it's a gimmick for when I manage people. So it is a gimmick.
But it's a part of, it's a part of the list of attributes that happen to accompany you where you go, and being able to utilize that for interacting with the world around you in a unique way that not everyone can. If I go to Denny's, that's depressing. If you go to Denny's, that's something that...
What happens when I go to Denny's?
If you go to Denny's, that's an opportunity for something that, can be...
And actually, I think it's not Denny's. No, we didn't do Denny's. Chili's is going to be in the
Chili's. There you go. So that's something that can be.
I took the Reverend of Sin Ryzen to Chili's.
Nice. So that's something that you are in a special circumstance to be able to do, and so I say working the gimmick, but it's something that. I don't want to come across as potentially disrespectful because, like I said, it's not a gimmick. That's really you, but it's something that you can do that I can't, and it's something that is a special, unique thing that you can do that people are interested in seeing. Obviously,
so much that I get to try Chili's for the first time as a 26-year-old. Isn't that delightful? Don't you envy me so much?
I do, actually.
Yeah, and it makes for a fun and entertaining video to watch, and thousands of people see it and are like, oh my, I want to see what this is like. Because someone who's been there before and, just sees it through like, oh, there's one on that street corner and this street corner. It gives seeing our world through new eyes, it gives a unique perspective and gives the ability to see the world around us through a new pair of eyes, through a unique presentation, and not only through a special talent like yours that's trained in presentation, but also through a unique dynamic, which also brings us into your presentation of going and traveling to these different events. One of your first I believe it was your first traveling to a wrestling event was Evolution, right?
Okay. It was my first wrestling travel that happened while I already had the channel.
That's what I meant. I should have clarified that. Yeah.
Yeah. So my first time wrestling trip was actually freaking WrestleMania.
Nice.
That was kind of insane. It was WrestleMania 29, and it was my first wrestling trip to America, and it was my first time in America at all.
Wow, so that's a lot of firsts all at once. Good Lord. How was that like for you, other than a lot?
Insane. That was crazy. That was literally like one of the most like insane weeks of my life. I loved that.
You say weeks. Did you do the full WrestleMania Access, or were you just there for nice?
We did everything. We did Access. We did Raw After Mania. We did like the fan experience. They did like a tour to the headquarters in Connecticut. We did that as well.
Oh,
so it was
dang! I didn't even know that was a part of it. Dang.
Yeah, it was actually very, very interesting. It was so fun when they did Money in the Bank during the pandemic, where they were like in the building.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've actually been there. It was so much fun to watch.
The breakout of your YouTube channel wrestling travel was for Evolution, and a show that desperately needs a sequel. Evolution.
Oh my God.
I wanted to ask you if you had the power to either suggest or book it yourself or whatever for this year, Evolution 2, using the roster we got right now, or however you would do it, what's your card for Evolution 2?
That's such a tough question. And like, do you want me to book like a 3-hour-long show right now on the fly?
Or if you don't have to do all of it, but if what would you say if you're doing maybe just the main event?
Yeah, I was thinking I would definitely keep Liv Morgan in the main event because I feel like she's been doing great, and I feel like she's the breath of fresh air that we've been needing. Like, it was such a long time coming. It was like such a slow burn, and finally she's in the picture.
Absolutely.
And maybe I would really like what I'm really enjoying since Triple H took over the creative is that he's finally bringing up all the NXT talent.
Yes.
So I would love to see an NXT talent getting this like turbo push, because we haven't seen that in such a long while. I'm going to sidetrack so much, but literally my favorite thing about WWE as a teen, and like my favorite shows, my favorite gimmicks were that like, oh, Money in the Bank, where like you win this briefcase and it's a sudden lift in your career, or oh, Royal Rumble, you never know who's going to win and it's a sudden like rise to the main event. It was so cool to see all this new talent. Or like, oh, you tune into SmackDown and suddenly there's this vignette of a person that you as a solely WWE fan, right? Because at 15 years old, I was solely a WWE fan. Right. You've never seen that person before, and suddenly there's this vignettes every week, and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then they debut, and they're like instantly a big deal. I miss that so much. Like, it just doesn't really happen anymore. And honestly, I feel like with Triple H, it might actually start happening again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, now with the faction that got introduced, right? Bailey and Io Sky and Dakota Kai. Like, of course, Bailey like looks like the obvious leader there, but like potentially, I would freaking love to see Dakota Kai in the main event.
Yeah.
All right. So we got.
I'm a guy for sure.
Liv Morgan and Dakota Kai. What would you do for the Raw? Are you keeping the title on Bianca Belair?
Honestly, I love Bianca as a champion. I feel like she has everything. Like, she has the in-ring, she has the presence, she has the charisma, she has the look. Like, I was at SummerSlam when she lost the title very quickly. And everyone was very upset.
Yeah.
Do you think this year made up for it? Or do you think it was still... Okay.
I think it did. Like, honestly... I just feel like with WWE, we're just not expecting the good things like ever. So when it actually happens, it's like we repeated like a mantra, like, oh, just let it play out. Let's just wait. Just let it play out. And then it never does. So when it actually does, it's like, oh my God.
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad she's champion now, and I think she's in a good place.
So I think to piggyback off your Liv there, I just want to touch on that. Because in 2019, when I was doing some extra work with NXT and WWE, she was hurt at the time. And I'm too loud and obnoxious just to hang out where the extras are supposed to hang out at. And I ended up hanging out with Liv for a good portion of 2 days. And the girl is so funny, has so much charisma, and it's not been shown previously because the women get such a finite amount of time, let alone someone of where she was at. So it's so nice to see her be elevated and starting to show her personality and what she can actually do. I'm with you. And someone like Dakota Kai, who's infinitely talented, but I think we've only scratched the surface on there as well. So definitely agreed.
And as for Bianca's opponent for the hypothetical evolution, or revolution.
They seem to mix that up in the build up too. Yeah, so I feel you.
Yeah, literally, right. Like, I know people complain a lot about like legend appearances, and I am usually one of those people complaining. But I feel like for a show of that scale, especially if we have like an entire like women's card, like, and it's not taking up space from anyone, I would almost love like a big return, like a veteran, like maybe like a Nikki Bella if she can.
There you go.
Or,
Okay.
or maybe like a, I don't know, like a Mickey James.
That could work.
Something I would love because I've wanted her in WWE since before she worked before WWE, is if they could do something to where an NXT talent is throwing shade at her trainer, and then we end up getting Sarah Del Rey in the ring. I'd be a big fan of that. Just some way to utilize her. She's incredible.
You know what was my favorite women's WWE feud of like this recent, maybe like 5+ years?
What's that?
Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair.
Yeah.
I just feel like they have such an insane chemistry when it comes to in-ring. Like, and it happened with no crowds. Like, it happened in an empty warehouse.
Right.
And somehow they still like just tore it down. Like, just the way they work with each other, down to the tiniest things, like down to impact, down to selling, down to like every minuscule like part that makes the wrestling match great. I just felt like they worked insanely good together. Like,
and everything was so much more scrutinized in that era.
Yeah. Because you have the opportunity to nitpick at it. Because like sometimes you get distracted by a crowd shot. Sometimes you get distracted by the announce team being funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes just like, oh, let's just do the light like that. Let's do the frame like that. But literally when it's an empty room and it's just the two of you, it's insanely hard. I also really appreciated. Yeah, they did, yeah. I also very much appreciated Asuka throughout the entire COVID era. I feel like she was one of the best workers at the time in terms of filling up the room. Because first of all, she has the energy to do so. Like, she's super high energy, she's super charismatic, and she's perfect for a setting like that. But also, again, she's a veteran. She's been in this for decades, right? And she knows those, like, again, small things, like even the way that she like enunciates, the way that she makes sounds throughout the match. It's all just incredible. It all just works. She was amazing in that setting.
Her ability to pull a face, a very William Regal-esque, where she can pull a face and you like it'll send you. Like, she doesn't have to say a word, or just the small little movements that you're like, God, I adore her. When you interview so many wrestlers, when you meet so many people, you can start to get immune to who they are and what they are.
Yeah.
I, for one, again, doing it 15 years, I never really, like, even when I meet someone where they're at a higher level or people that have become friends, it takes a minute to sit back and go, I'm casually talking about someone who other people will be like, oh my God. Yeah. Do you find yourself getting that way at all?
Yeah. I've definitely gotten like desensitized.
Okay.
And I also feel like it's a good thing because as an interviewer, as a content creator, you have to be professional. Sure. So it's like there's no place for fangirling that whatsoever.
Right.
And like I've definitely made friends with some people I've interviewed, but like when we're in that setting, it's just business. It's just, you have, and it's not in a bad way, not in like I'm stuck up way.
No, of course.
In like this is like the space for this, and this is my reputation as well, and like this is something that has to be completely professional. Like, I've definitely had people freaking like ask me to like appear on their podcast and then in the same breath try to hit on me. Like, that's the worst thing that you can do ever to anyone. Like, don't do that ever. Like, even if you think that this person that you're like interviewing or something is flirting with you, or like if you think that like they want to hang out on a separate day. Like, if they do follow through, talk to them, like hang out with them if you want to. But like, this is what we're doing right now, and this is the only thing we're doing. But also, like, it's funny because obviously I still love wrestling so much, and I'm still a fan, and sometimes I will get nervous to meet a wrestler, but it's so random. Like, you would never guess like who I'm nervous to meet because I never know. And some of the instances have been like, I would literally like casually interview Matt Sydal, casually interview Dolph Ziggler, because like Ziggler, I've also like known him on the internet for a while. Sure. I'll like casually ask Charlotte Flair a question at a digital press conference. But then like, so when I went to my first PWG show, and it's been like a dream too. Like, I specifically flew to LA to go to a PWG show because I feel like it's such like a cradle of wrestling. Oh, yeah. Like, I wanted to see it so bad. And that was before he got signed with AEW. But I got to meet Brody King for the first time after the show. I was so nervous. I was freaking out, and it was funny too because they were tag team champions, right, with Malachi Black.
Yep.
And I had met Malachi like numerous times before, so like I was not nervous about that. But Brody King, I was just freaking out. Another person that I was really like nervous to meet was Etikus Kogar, and I feel like a lot of the times it's just like when I find a wrestler to be like very immersed in their art and to be like very, very creative, like that's flabbergasting to me, but also intimidating. It's like, it's almost like walking into the 16th chapel. Like, oh, like I'm afraid to like breathe wrong because like there's art happening here. And I'm a huge fan of Patrick Skoger, and I feel like I was nervous to meet him, but then every single following interaction, I was also freaking out. Because I'm just like, I'm scared of him. Like in a good way, like in a way that you should be.
A respectful terror.
My favorite thing about Malachi and Brody is like the presentation of how absolutely terrifying they are. But then Brody puts on his reading spectacles, and Tommy just gives you those charming eyes, and they're two of the sweetest humans on the planet.
So nice.
I love them.
Huge. There's those like huge guys. I am 5'11". Brody King towers over me. I'm like this, and literally the most like nicest, quietest, sweetest person ever.
I've heard the same about like Bray Wyatt.
Yes.
Every time I've heard him in an interview when he's not, talking in that cadence, he's just chill. He's talking about the weather and just.
I've met him twice, but both times very briefly. So like I can't like give you a rundown of what he's like. But yeah, he was super chill. He was super nice.
Yeah, he just reminds me of Post Malone. But like,
you keep dropping like maybe accidentally like Easter eggs of what I am as a person because I am obsessed with Post Malone.
Oh my God, I adore Post Malone, the coolest guy ever.
Well, we're about out of time. Don't want to take up too much of your day here. So, just before we go, I guess. One last thing, I did want to ask you one final thing, if I may. I heard you drop this little nugget in one of your videos, and I wanted to hear if you could expound upon it, if you would. You mentioned a definitive least favorite of yours, the least favorite wrestler, your least favorite of all time, Braun Strowman.
Okay. First of all, let me just say that like he definitely shares this honorable title with a couple other people.
Oh, okay. There is a bottom level.
There's a whole tier.
Yeah. But also I want to like point out that any wrestler who is a horrible person in real life is my least favorite wrestler. Like we're not like talking that. Like obviously if you're a terrible abuser, like of course like we're not like that's outside of wrestling, and that's like that like instantly erases this person from wrestling for me. Like that's just a given, right?
Yeah.
But with Braun Strowman, I feel like, first of all, I almost feel like it's both. I almost feel like his very questionable beliefs and very questionable stances when it comes to wrestling, and like anyone who like shits in the pond that they're drinking from, slanders indie wrestling to then run an indie show. Maybe not the coolest thing to do. But also, like, it's just honestly nothing personal as well. Like, it's just on a taste level, on a viewer level, it just does not connect. It never did, and like, I just really, really don't dig anything about his presentation.
He does nothing for me. Nothing. Even when he was working with Sammy.
You guys brought it up because, like, I try to remain positive. Like, since I started doing wrestling content, I've literally like refrained from talking negatively of wrestlers, like almost like ever.
Yeah,
like,
I won't.
I maybe like tweeted something negative about a wrestler, again, as a wrestler, not as a person, maybe like once or twice this year.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, they're putting me on the spot. But yeah, it's just, as I said, like I definitely disagree with some of his some facets of his lifestyle. I definitely disagree with them vehemently. But also, again, just does nothing for me. Just, I'm not saying like that the gimmick in itself is bad. Like, it's very WWE. It worked at the time. It got over, but like it just does nothing for me. I just don't like it.
I even thought when Sammy worked with him, like, okay, cool, here we go. Sammy will get something. I was like, God, I hate every second of this.
Well, if we want to end on a more positive level, I did pull up your I did pull up your Mount Rushmore of your wrestlers.
Ooh,
I don't remember it, so do remind me.
We've got Dolph Ziggler.
Hell yeah.
The Miz, Wade Barrett, and PJ Black.
How long ago was that?
This was circa your 100th video.
Which was a while back.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's been updated. If it has been, I would like to hear.
I would say it's been updated. I still enjoy all of those people a lot. And like, again, like when I say this, like when I was given this answer, it's not like I think they're the greatest wrestler of the entire universe of all time. Like, that's not how I mean it. Like, I don't think PJ Black is Hulk Hogan level. Like, that's not what we're talking about. Those are like my favorites, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
But also, like, I definitely still appreciate all of those people, but PJ Black, like, hasn't been doing major stuff for a while now. Like, he's wrestled in South Africa for a bit, and, like, you know, he's still, you know, doing stuff in Mexico as well, and he's still great. But I just feel like he's not as prominent anymore to where I would like put him next to Dolph Ziggler right now and be like, yeah, this is equal. Like this, I feel equally about those people. No. Right. Also, Wade Barrett like moved away from wrestling. He does commentary now, which he's in my commentary mount for now. Let's just say that.
All right. So that opens up 2 spots.
Yeah, see, honestly, with Wade Barrett, like I do consider him a mentor almost. Like I've known him for quite a bit, and he's definitely helped me with so many things. Like he's been very, very helpful with advice, and with being a fellow person with an accent, he's like helped me with promo work and like how to navigate it, how to amp up an accent without losing articulation and stuff like that. So I definitely I admire him as a person a lot, and he's, as I said, he's in my commentary about Rushmore now. Miz, I don't know. He's definitely like someone I would call an all-time favorite for sure. But also, I feel like if we're talking current, I don't know. Are we talking current? No, we're talking all-time favorite. Yeah. Okay, so it's Dolph Ziggler, The Miz.
And 2 open spots.
I have Valkyrie for sure.
There we go.
Nice.
Well, then this one is the tough spot.
Yeah, the last one is always the hard one.
You know what? It's going to be a very unconventional one, and I've even tweeted a joke about it, but I stand by it, and I'm proud of it. Let's say Trent Beretta.
All right.
I say Trent's awesome. So
amazing.
He's sneaky good. His promos are fantastic. So no shade from me.
Recently, I tweeted when there was this "she's a 10 but" meme going around, and it was she's a 10 but her favorite wrestler is Trent Beretta.
That's brilliant.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for being here. This was so fun. I hope you can come back on to talk wrestling figures or whatever else we can come up with. This was a blast. Thank you for appraising or giving your thoughts on.
I was going to say appraising.
Yeah, because especially for the $3 sticker that was on it from the Goodwill. You've given me hope.
Oh my God, did someone give it up? Wow.
Yeah, it was this and a lot of DVDs and the Goodwill. They even put an air hole on the mouth so he can breathe. He can breathe.
Xenia, thank you so much for coming on. There are so many different ways to see you, watch you, view your content. How do we go about doing that?
Now, my YouTube channel, my main squeeze is youtube.com/XeniaDidThat, XENIA, and I go by the same name on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, LinkedIn, if you're into that. It's all XeniaDidThat. I also have my merch on Wrestling Tees as well as on Teespring. You can find all the links in my link tree. That's in my bios everywhere. And yeah, I post a lot of content that also maybe doesn't have to do with wrestling on my Instagram. It's fashion, it's food, it's travel. But of course, all the wrestling talk all the time. So a lot of cool interviews coming up. As we mentioned, part 2 of European Tries American Food coming up, which I'm very excited for. So check it out. Every follow matters.
And all those links will be in the description as well. So make sure you go and check those links out. And yes, thank you very much for being here. I hope you had as much fun as we did. And I hope all the listeners out there had fun listening as well. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you guys for having me. And I specifically would like to point out that you guys are very well prepared. Like, you came prepared, almost scarily prepared.
That's her.
On my toes.
That's her.
Me all the tough questions about the wrestlers that I like or dislike, that I had to like really bite the bullet and tell it as it is.
My preparation was, I met her once when I was doing meet and greets for Britt, and she was super excited and she was nice, and that was my preparation.
I mean, they could go either way.
Well, thank you very much. Coming from you, that is a very big compliment. Well, she was fun.
Dude, she's awesome. She's so much fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do the outro then. I will.
Yeah. Also forgot about the outro again.
It's
this Midwest goodbye, damn it.
It's what we're pre-programmed to do now, aren't we?
It really is.
Yes, we are.
I don't know how should I look during the outro?
I don't know. We did it. All right, thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
We're doing a great job here. All right, so thank you for watching.
Wait, do they have like a puppet and the camera's on them and they don't really usually record the ventriloquist? This is odd.
This is very fucking strange, isn't it? This is weird. This is very weird.
Old strategy.
Yeah. You can do almost every letter. We're doing that, but it's still a little weird. You can still see the lips kind of moving. Ventriloquism. You wouldn't see that on every podcast. You wouldn't get it if you listened to it. We're doing this is a weird advertisement for the audio only version, of which
that's why it gets cut out, Viv.
Oh, okay, fine. We'll edit that out then. That's
I mean, we won't, but
I will. Yeah. Thank you all very much for watching this episode of Kick Out at 1. The episode with the... Ooh, what? Oh.
1. Kick Out at 1.
You were telling me to... Like, what did I do wrong?
Hold on, it sucked. Fuck that,
good.
Fuck you.
Take 2, god damn it.
No, Kick Out at 1. It's a 1.
Yes, the Kick Out at 1, indeed. The interview with Xenia, the Russian Diamond. Oh man, she was so much fun. I had a I've realized when I was editing the interview with Ryan Cross, I said I had a blast a lot. The phrase blast. Apparently.
I say that just in general, so that might be.
I don't know. I hope people don't notice that too much. Well, now that I said it, people are going to notice. But I had a blast. I had a friggin' blast talking with her. She was so much fun. She was so much fun to talk to. What are your socials, Mikey? Plug your socials for God's sake.
Twitter and Instagram, MKYXWLD, ProWrestlingTees.com /Mikey MIKEY WILD. I've yet to redo the TikTok. Facebook Mikey Wild. And that's it.
Bree's emerging at the very end here. Come on down. She's got her duck shirt on.
Hi, Bree.
She also made a small cameo during the Ryan Cross interview as one of Undertaker's druids if they were just waking up. Yeah, she just woke up. Hello. My social media is also in the description, and you saw them on the runner while we were talking. Twitter, Instagram, various iterations of Vivian Jade, either Vivian Jade Graham, Vivian Jade VA on Twitter, Vivian Jade Talk on TikTok, Vivian Jade TV on Twitch, and just Vivian Jade on YouTube. That's my primary one. I do visual novel stuff, voice work, etc. And all those are in the description for your enjoyment pleasure. And then, of course, there's the Kick Out at One social medias. Those are the top links in the description. Probably under the guest, of course. Want to shout out to the guest, but they're in the description. I just hit the microphone. Sorry. They're in the description, so you can follow. We got Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for Kick Out at One specifically. I used to be able to put out a video every day on my main channel. Ever since we started doing this, not even close.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. That's why I literally told Bree the other day that I can see one of the reasons why that one of the first employees for any successful YouTube channel is an editor.
Yeah, no question.
Bree dancing in the background.
I was gonna say she's a dancing fool back there.
She is grooving. But yes, thank you all very much for watching this episode and interview, or listening to it if you're listening on this audio-only platforms. As of recording, we are in the review process for the various other audio-only platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Google, iHeartRadio, stuff like that. As of the time that this episode comes out, who the hell knows how that went? Hopefully successfully. You will be able to tell by the links in the description or the notifications. I have to move my head so she's actually in shot. But yes, as of right now, of course, it'll be on Podbean or on the YouTube channel. It's hard to focus on an outro while all this is going on behind me. Thank you all for listening and watching. Have a nice day. Bye.
I kick out at one. Hook of the leg and a kick out at one. A kick out at one. Kick out at one. Hooks the leg and a kick out at one. Kicked out at one.